Steve Kilberg, thank you so much for coming on the show today, the Edison podcast. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Ed. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. So I want to back up. So a lot of people aren't going to know who Steve Kilberg is, right? So who? Because I went and I checked, but not everybody's going to know this is Edison. We've been around a while. Your greatest accomplishments come from your greatest defeats. So we'd like to know if you've had any of those along the way in your journeys.
One or two.
Well, just whatever works for you. Been doing Edison for almost 2.5, almost 3 years, but last year I took a little hiatus for about 6 months because it wasn't going. So I'm real big on we always have failures. We learn
Yeah.
from our failures, and I
Yeah.
want you to talk about those. In the
Okay.
beginning, people talked about them, but they got to a point where a lot of people just want to come on and they wouldn't talk about their failures. So I stopped the show and I'm like, we need to back to where it needs to be. People
Okay.
need to understand that failures happen and you learn from them and you move forward, and that's how you become better. Because a lot of people think the business started, it's a success overnight. No, it's 15 years of trials or 20 years of trial for the overnight success for people to learn. There are some exceptions to those rules, but in general.
That would be, it is not a linear line in my experience, as most others will be the same way. So it's not like an up and to the right, hey, everything worked out great. It doesn't work that way.
Not usually, but there's unusual situations. People get lucky on certain things, but
Correct.
I find even because like right now in our industry, I'm in the mortgage industry. We were doing amazing because rates were so low, but that doesn't stay there forever and things happen. But right now we're so high on interest rates that is affecting the whole market, and it has nothing to do with all the companies in it. They didn't do anything wrong.
Yep.
Somebody decided to shut down a pipeline, and we'll just leave it at that. So.
Yeah, correct. And the world is always evolving. Change is the only thing that is constant.
Right. And that's why I tell people if you don't like the mortgage industry today, just wait. Tomorrow will be worse.
Yeah, I know, right? Right. So do you want me to kind of dig into my
Yep.
recent yeah,
Well, I
okay.
want you. So, what's your background?
Yeah.
How did you get into doing business and all that stuff?
All right, yeah, let me give you that. So I after school worked for a traditional, kind of corporate job, and there were pieces of it I really enjoyed, and that was I worked out of my home, being somebody in my early 20s, and I managed a sales territory. So because I had to be responsible for my little business, if you will, because I worked out of my home, out of my apartment at the time, it gave me that taste of doing something of my own. And I remember as I kind of moved forward, changing jobs, it's like I really enjoyed that aspect of it. So I said, I've got to find something that gives me that flexibility and that freedom. Now, still, I had responsibilities with my job. And my father had always put that bug in my ear because he worked in a large organization. And he said, while there's great things to this, you should do something on your own. It's the only way you can control your destiny. And so that was always planted early on as well. And then as years went by, I had a job separation and I made a conscious choice to take care of my aging parents because they had some health issues. And I had the time, I was still single at the time. And that kind of came back to full circle where my father and I would talk, and they were at the end of their life. And it just was that really defining moment where you're like, okay, if I'm going to do something, I got to do it now. And otherwise I'll regret it the rest of my life. And you hear these stories of people that have interviewed people on their deathbed at the very end, and they asked them what is their biggest regret? And they said, not having the courage to do something that I wanted to do, always just not taking that step forward. And literally, it was those are thoughts going through my head as my parents were passing away. And I was like, I have to try now. So that led me into this where I'm today. And there's even been a couple of little side so up and down and backwards. I just started doing some consulting at the time because I needed the flexibility because I had a job separation. It's helped take care of my parents. And I wasn't enjoying certain aspects of that based on what I was doing for local businesses. And I was still early on, didn't know a lot of things from that perspective, learning some tactical things. So then I started to do e-commerce. And if you would have told me when we started this that we would start a business from an idea, we had a dinner one night, my wife and I, because I had since then met my wife, and grew it to over 7 figures. And then have a pandemic literally crush our business. I would have fallen off the table, off my chair laughing, saying, yeah, whatever, that's never going to happen. Well, that's exactly what happened. So we grew our e-commerce business to 7 figures. We were going, now my wife and I fast forward, things were going well. We started traveling the world. We were in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. We're having dinner. And I says, we should sell this. It's not going to be a home run, but we could sell it. And, we'll take some money off the table, but I'll be able to say I started something and sold it. Then started thinking, if I did this and this, I could double this, and I know I could do it. Well, things happened outside of my control, and then of course I made some mistakes, which led to the colossal thing that happened to us, which I'll get to in a second. And we got a phone call from her family saying, "Come say goodbye to her father." And so that was like, okay. Well, goes back to Florida, which is where she's from, and then it turns out he wasn't really at the very, very end, but he just needed some eyes on him due to his age. He was still mentally with it and all those things. So she knew my answer was going to be, "Let's do this," because I took care of my parents, and we took care of him, and then he has since passed away. Now, in conjunction with all that, we were going, our business then started in late 2018, started going a little bit flat, and we had a rough Q4 that year because some things changed in the marketplace. And then this thing called the pandemic happened, and we ran out of, so we were doing e-commerce, so we had zero product. Our supplier was closed for months. Then, because we're a smaller business, the order that we had placed that was already in the queue went to the very bottom because the larger businesses were ordering larger volumes because they were trying to catch up as well. So they're going to fulfill those, which is understandable. So our business came to a screeching halt, and that was a very painful lesson because while I had done some things properly and got it to that certain spot, I had made some critical errors, which then exposed themselves. So when we got to that spot where the spigot gets turned off in some aspects of the business, and because I didn't do the things that I knew I should be doing deep enough, I was doing some of them, but just not deep enough. It really put a blow to our business. And that is one of the colossal mistakes I will never, I knew, but now it was just that giant spotlight of, okay, this is going to come back to haunt you. So now, fast forward.
Hold on, stop.
Yeah,
Right there.
please.
All right. So
All right.
e-commerce, what were you selling?
We were selling some fitness accessories. So very small items, very low ticket items, but we were making it work. We were running paid ads into a sales funnel, and it was converting just fine. It was converting incredibly fine. I mean, looking back, I didn't realize how lucky I had that. But I did the hard work to get to that spot because I learned from others and did some strategical things, which put me in a place which was very positive. But I didn't take that next step and leverage an asset that I had built.
Right.
And
So
that
the
was a
funnel,
mistake.
was that through like Clip Funnels or one of
Yep.
those companies? Okay.
Yep. So I was using ClickFunnels, so I got my 2 Comma Club award, and so we grew it, and it was great. But ironically, as a side story, but it's related. So the year that I walked across stage at Funnel Hike Live, which is actually going on the filming of this podcast here today, this is a few years ago, pre-pandemic. I remember walking across stage, but I was like, it was a moment of elation saying I did it, or I'm receiving this award in front of thousands of people. But inside, I knew we were in deep trouble because, again, I was already talking to my supplier at that point in time. If people can recall, China was already closed, yet we were still open. Things were still fine, but we'd heard rumblings. But I knew we had a major problem in our business because our supplier was closed and they had no idea when they were going to open up. And so it was it was a strange moment because yes, I'm trying to celebrate, but internally I'm panicking, I'm freaking out because knowing that we're going to run out of product in the next week, and what am I going to do? And so that was a moment of clarity. So I enjoyed it, of course, but I didn't enjoy it to the depth that I was hoping to.
Right. If you got it a year earlier, it would have been better, is what you're saying.
That is correct. That is correct.
It's still happening. You still use it. So I
Yeah.
know a lot of this stuff. That's why I'm asking those questions.
Yep.
All
Yeah.
right. You said there was a few things you didn't go deep enough. And
Yeah.
that was what
So
caused the issue. What are those?
and this ties into what I'm doing today is I'm doing the M&A advising, and I'll circle back to this. But one of the things that I knew I needed to do, and I just didn't do it deep enough, I didn't focus on it enough. Because again, if you think about this, we were running ads and our funnel was working. We were making money. I was putting $1 in and I was getting 2 out. It's working, man. Keep going. Well, I should have focused on getting that to $3, $4, $5. And how would you do that? Well, you build a relationship with your leads and or your customers. I did okay with our leads because they would convert to customers. They became customers. I didn't forget them, but I didn't do a good enough job of really nurturing that relationship and building a strong bond as I could have, because people trusted us to buy our products. Many of our customers came back and bought multiple times some of the accessories that we were selling. We were just selling some small, again, fitness accessories. And that was also a belief thing in my mind. So, first of all, it's like, are people going to come back and buy from me? When I first started, I'm like, who the heck is going to buy something from me? Well, sure enough, they did. Sold $1 million worth of products, so they clearly did. And but that's just the growth and the transformation that you go through in this entrepreneurial journey, especially going down the path that I chose to go down. But back to your question of, I didn't build a deep enough relationship with our email list and our customers and leads, to the fact that when we got crushed by the pandemic, ran out of product, I could have sustained our business longer in terms of still had revenue coming in if I had a deep enough relationship with them. And I did not do that for a variety of reasons. And it is what it is. And so now I know how to rectify that. There's ways to do that, but I've gotten much more focused on that aspect of business, and that is truly a business. So now that I'm in the M&A world,
before you keep going,
yeah,
sorry, I have my own show.
please.
Anyway, so talking about, keeping with your clients. So you're talking about
Yeah.
make sure you're have them in a CRM, I assume,
Yeah.
is what you're talking about.
Yep.
And keep touching them, because somebody who buys from you the first time will be more likely to buy from you second, third, fourth time if you keep on them. From what I hear, the money's in the email list. That's where it's worth. All the money is that list, and you want to grow that list. And being part of ClickFunnels, that's one of the things they teach you, is your list is where your money is. So keep growing that list. And so, I mean, for me, I'm in the mortgage industry, so I have a huge CRM from every client I've ever done, and we touch them constantly just to keep growing that. But in the first 10, 15 years of my life, never did. You got to remember also, we only had 286s and 386s back then, so we didn't have what we do now. The opportunities you have now with the AI and everything else we have now is just makes it so amazing that anybody can do what they want now.
That is correct, 100%. I'm going to just clarify. This is the belief I had before, was the money is in the list. And what I've kind of changed that perspective and said, the money is in the relationship you have with your list. So it's a little bit of a different kind of angle on that, because if you're not talking to those customers, you're not emailing them, and you don't always have to be selling. Actually, in my opinion, you shouldn't be always like sell, because people will get turned off by that. But the reality is, and this is a belief that I had, a mistake that I made, and most business owners fall into this. They're saying, I don't want to spam my list. I don't want them to burn out. I don't want them to unsubscribe. And the reality is, today, we are all getting so many emails. People don't open all my emails. And it's, you almost get offended saying, how dare them? Don't they know who I am? Right? Don't they know the value that I'm providing? But their lives are busy, and so they have a lot of stuff. I'm on a list right now that I don't unsubscribe, but I keep receiving the emails, and occasionally I'll open one, and occasionally I'll click and go do something, but not every email. But I don't unsubscribe, and so that was the mistake I made.
No, I understand that, what you're talking about, the relationship, because I'm into relationships, and it's when people say, how much do you want to do in my industry? They say, I want to close this many loans. I wanted this. No, I want to help this many families. It's about relationships and how you look at them. I'm on radio, and it's about you, not listeners, but it's about you when I'm talking to you. Same thing with podcasting. I'm talking to you there. So people understand that you're talking to them and not everybody else around them. And so what you're saying is relationships are key, and that's exactly what our business is building relationships.
Yep. And the stronger relationship you have with your customer or your prospect, the more valuable your business will be, because that will translate into revenue and profit. So eventually, if you ever want to sell it, it'll be worth more money.
Well, again, back to the list.
Yeah, exactly.
It's important. And like you said, a good list, not a bunch of leads. Actual prospect list or client list is what we're talking about. And because that takes time to build and nurturing that, and you want them to unsubscribe if they don't want to hear from you, right? Because then you know who your list really is. And so, because I've unsubscribed to certain ones that just keep sending me stuff, I'm like, I'm never going to buy that again, right? But the other ones, like you said, you stay on because you want to hear from them.
Correct. If they're providing me valuable content. Now, the key part of that, going back to your CRM, and there's plenty of them out there, right? That you can pick and choose the one that works for you. I'm strongly encouraging your listeners to try to segment your list as best you can. And it's not that hard to do with any automation software out there. It's very simple to do. I can guarantee if you have got any system, any quality CRM, you can do this. And why that's important is it helps you segment that list to build that relationship. So if somebody comes into your world, Ed, and you ask them something about the mortgage industry that's specific to them, like what is a concern of theirs? And I'm not in that space, so I can't quite, but I'm saying you would know the questions to ask them. And if they raise their hand, they can check a box for saying, I want this, or I want this, like in the fitness world, saying, do you have a problem with this? And if they say yes, then I can tag them in my CRM. So now I know I can send them content in either information or products around that pain point where I can help them solve that. They're going to be more trusted. I was reading a stat from HubSpot, which is a well-known marketing company, and they said businesses that segment their list and then properly put people into automations and then create valuable content they're sending out, the users are 16 times more likely to click. I mean, think about that, 16 times. So the job of the email is for them to open it and then do something with that, to go someplace else. And if they're 16 times more likely to click because you've segmented the list, because you've taken the time to learn what they want, and then tie that into a product or service that you have, everybody's a win. The user is going to be appreciative because you're solving a problem for me. You're giving me information. I'm grateful for what you've done. We've all done this. We've clicked on emails and gone someplace because it's like, this solves my problem.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that hard to do, but most business owners don't do that.
Most business owners don't understand what their perfect client is and what is their client, what problems do they solve for their client. And if they solve that problem, what's the next problem they just created?
That's exactly it. So here, let me give you some examples of that right there. So in our e-commerce business, I knew, and this goes back to what I said earlier, I knew this, but I didn't take that next step and keep this going deep enough, right? But I knew that our ideal buyer, our ICP, our avatar, was a 48-year-old female who lived outside San Antonio, Texas, was married, college educated, drove an SUV, worked in the medical field, was a nurse, had a child, owned an iPhone, and ran on the weekends. And I tell this to people, I'm like, how in the world did you know this? Well, that was data that I researched, and there's a variety of tools out there. Some are free, some are paid, but for most of them are even free. And then I did try to learn that from my customer. Now, granted, we sold to males, we sold to people older and younger, but that was our sweet spot, right? And all those things I just identified, if I still talked in terms of those parameters to my list appropriately, they would have been more and more likely. And I did that, but to a point, I didn't go deep enough, and that was a major mistake I made.
Only San Antonio, huh?
Only no, actually, obviously, we were selling people all over the country, but that was the data. And it was just, and this is the thing I love about what I do now. It's just data that I'm reading. I'm looking at this and saying, we have a lot of people coming from the San Antonio area, and they're clicking and they're doing this. And I kept going deeper and deeper and deeper. And there's just a lot of different areas you can gather this data, and most that's free. But one of the things that I have found out now in the world that I'm living in, when I do coaching and consulting with businesses, people have no idea who their ideal customer is, as you mentioned a minute ago, Ed, and they don't bother to take the time, and they're making a big mistake by not taking that little bit of time, because it all relates back to what I said earlier.
Right. You need to niche it down so you know so you can get to where you need. I mean, there's so many people who don't, like, for their content they create on YouTube, LinkedIn, and all that stuff, they don't know who their client is. So they're creating all this content and not bringing the right people to them.
That's exactly it. If you bring the right people, other people will then start to go. And if you do your homework appropriately, as I know you talked about this and you know this, the riches are in the niches or even the sub niches, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the example has always been like, let's just pick, for example, like weight loss as an example, right? So you could be, okay, weight loss is very generic. Well, then it's mothers who want to lose weight. Well, then it's mothers who just had a baby and want to lose weight. Well, the mothers who just had a baby want to lose weight, that's very specific. That's not a male, or that's not somebody else who may be older. That's a very specific demographic, but that demographic, that target audience, is a very large audience. And if you serve them appropriately, that's a 7-figure business right there.
And you can add the next level, which is the husband of the wife who just had a baby, because
that's right,
they normally gain weight at the same time.
They do indeed, exactly. So then you can, and again, you position your business to solve that thing in a unique enough way, displaying your brand and your personality. People are being more inclined to do that, and it just comes from, again, building that relationship.
Right. But and knowing who your client is and knowing what the problem you solve, but some people solve this problem and they don't understand that they just created a new one for them and know how to get around. I know I said it already, but it's important to say this, that because then you have to look at, okay, if I solve this problem, did I create a new one? What's that new one I created? How do I solve that one for them, and keep going?
But that's where you make the money, right? Because it goes back to, you can then grow your relationship with your customer, and how that relates to is you're growing your lifetime value with each individual customer. And if I know, for example, I'll give you a good example of doing this M&A work. Most business owners don't know their numbers, right? They don't know, especially their lifetime value. So if I have that relationship, I know who my customer is, I develop a relationship with them, they come back to me and buy multiple times, they buy their products and services through affiliate links, et cetera. It's still money I'm receiving back from this individual, right? If I know my lifetime value is X, let's say in this conversation, it's $100, and I can acquire a customer for $30. Well, what if I'm selling e-commerce? Your cost of goods sold are not going to be $70. I can tell you that right now. But if you even have some type of a service there's going to be some costs. You need to know those numbers, add all those costs up, and whatever's left over is how much you can spend to acquire customers. So in this example, if I had throw all those things in, if I know it costs me $20 or let's say $30 to fulfill a product, and I can, my lifetime value is $100, that means I can spend up to $70 to acquire a customer. And I can tell you right now, through various online marketing tactics, you can get a customer for a heck of a lot cheaper than $70, and you can print money in that regards.
Well, I'm sure that you have to get them cheap in order to pay for certain things these days.
Yeah, correct. Exactly. But the point is, you have to know those numbers deep enough. I did know that about a business. I knew that's how I could compete. I knew down to the penny what I could spend on ads. And when it got above a certain level, I knew that everything else was going to start to go sideways and not work. But I was fortunate enough to do this. But this is an eye opener for me as I'm coaching and consulting business owners, getting their digital business owners ready to sell now. They just don't know these numbers. And so doing that, I tell people all the time, once you know these numbers, it's going to take some time to put the work in. You will never look at your business the same way. I can guarantee you that.
So after your e-commerce, did you sell the next one, or did you rebuild it, or because what you say you're doing mergers and acquisitions now, right?
Yeah. So what happened was we were going to sell it, and then I made as I think I said earlier, I said I made a decision not to, and I said if I do
Right.
this and this, we can double it. Well, then things didn't go as planned in that Q4, and then the pandemic happened. We ran out of product, and so that went sideways real fast. So long story there, but we are in the process of rebuilding that. But in lieu of that, as I was getting involved, I knew I wanted to sell this, but I realized there's a lot of stuff I don't even know what I don't know. So I linked up. I'm part of another group, and I connected with a colleague of mine. He had deal flow coming in. He said, "Look, you understand the digital stuff. I'm selling these digital businesses. If you want to, if you want to help me, I can. You'll learn all of this stuff." And I said, "Absolutely, I want to learn this." So now I get to see behind the cover or behind the curtain, if you will, of all these digital businesses. So they're not all e-commerce. We only have a few e-commerce. We'll have SaaS businesses. We'll have content websites. We'll have app businesses. We'll even have other subscription type services. And it's fascinating to see the behind the scenes stuff. And we're able to find buyers for these assets. And I've learned a tremendous amount. So now, knowing the things that I've learned in the last year and a half, as I really step on the gas to grow our e-commerce business back up, I'm a totally different position. One of the things I have to do now and getting that is find a new supplier, because there's some supplier issues I started to uncover as the pandemic evolved. And I'm not going to get into that now, but I know there's other suppliers out there where I can get quality products. And once I solve that, once I have a little bit more time and I get some of that stuff and get our warehouse refilled, it's just going to turn things back on, because I know exactly what to do to rebuild the business.
I've seen on, certain people have posted certain videos and stuff, and one was like, if you had the last $10,000, what would you do? And she talked about how to set up an e-commerce store, I would do this, 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 and this. Is it really that easy?
Well, you have to, what she was probably saying and what I would say, because I have the
Someone to
experience
ship
now.
it,
Yeah.
someone else to connect it, somebody to get
Yep.
the products from here, someone get to there. Go ahead. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. No, I mean, because I've got those relationships established, I could do it relatively easy. Somebody coming in new, they can absolutely do it. Their time window is going to be a little bit longer. That's really what it comes down to. They're just going to go through that learning curve. It depends on their background, but if anybody's people listen to this podcast are smart enough. I already know that. Are they determined enough to kind of stay with it? Because the one thing they're going to have, I don't care what business you get yourself into, is you are going to have some roadblocks. I don't care what you're doing, you will always have them. So it's how do you solve those problems? And either you reach out to the right mentor, you read the right book, you research what you can do to solve that problem, and you can get through it, because everything is pretty much solvable. It really is, because people have already done it.
No, just the way she made it sounds like anybody can do it these days. It's so easy. And
Yeah.
sometimes when people say that, it's much harder than what they're trying to tell you.
Yeah.
They made their money, but they're trying to sell the information for you to do it, and it won't be as easy.
Yeah, the one thing I will tell people is when I'm coaching people, I'm like, you're going to figure this out on your own. It just, what I'm going to do is shorten that window, because you are going to get stuck at some point, and I can just help you because I've been doing this long enough. I can look at a business and within a short time frame, figure out where something is broken. I may not have the answer to that specific issue, but I can tell you where it's broken. It's just by digging and doing enough research. But because I've got that experience, I can look into this. Now, what I also tell people, going back to your comment about what that gal was saying, is when you really get things up and running, this is not, it's not rocket science. It's very simple. It's not easy though, but it's very simple, because once you understand how all the dots go together, you're like, oh, this is so simple, but it's not easy. There's a difference.
So, all right. So you're doing mergers and acquisitions, and what else you doing?
Yeah, so right now working with a colleague, and we have enough deal flow coming in. So I'm advising these businesses, and we're helping them take their assets and find a buyer for them. And it's been really educational on so many levels. And I get to really change that person's, to help them change their life, because it's a life-changing experience. Now, we're not talking hundreds of millions of dollars here. Sometimes we're talking $1 million. Most times we're not, but it's still a life-changing experience to actually sell something. I mean, we just sold a business last month from a small business where as a young guy in Eastern Europe, and the average yearly salary in that country is less than 20,000 US, and he cashed out hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that was a life-changing experience for him. Even you and I, Ed, and your listeners, if you built an asset and you sold it for $250,000, would that change your life? I would argue it would, because you could buy, not really buy a home anymore, but you could put a down payment on a home, a nice home, maybe that dream home. You could definitely buy a car. You could definitely do some things with that cash that you would do. So that would be a life-changing experience, in my opinion.
People say that wherever you work, you acquire that. Have you been picking up companies yourself?
Well, it's a great question. So that's one of
Because
the things.
people pick up animals at vet when they work for a vet
Yep.
company. Yeah, vet. Okay. Yeah.
No, it's okay. So one of the reasons when I was talking to my colleague, he said, look, because we get to see behind the scenes, you're going to get early dibs on an opportunity. And if there's something that comes along, if you want to buy it, you can. Now, I've acquired a couple of assets, and I'll just dig into that in a second. There was one business that wasn't quite specifically in our niche, but the numbers were all there. And I told my wife, I said, we should do this. But she's like, and it was a good point. She's like, look, you're gonna get distracted, and it was going to take some working capital that I didn't really want to take some risk at. So we passed on that. But it was one of those things, because all the numbers are right there. And I was like, well, good for the buyer. Because the one thing I've also learned from a mentor of mine, he says, if you come across a deal opportunity, it may seem like this is a deal of a lifetime. I got to go all in on this. Just be patient, because if there's enough stuff there that's not giving you that, if there's enough cause for pause, there will be another opportunity in 3 to 5 months or 3 to 4 months that's even going to be better than the first one. And I will tell you that has been my experience, because now I'm in the trenches doing this, right? So I've had a couple deals come along. Now I have picked up a couple of traffic assets. Those are very simple to pick up. And what those are basically a group of people that are my ideal customers. So I'm looking for the eyeballs. And if I can identify a group or an email list or a YouTube channel, because these things are out there, companies are just like that. They don't want anymore because they don't know how to do this. And so I'm acquiring those, so I can then take that asset and use that as a traffic source to our products and service. And I have picked up a couple of those. And so I'm working on building those up. But that's a piece of this. So that's been one of the benefits about doing this, because I'm just change my perspective on things.
Wow. So what next?
Well, right now, what next is there's a couple of big deals we're working on. I got to get these across the line, and then come 2024, the plan is we're going to take that. I'm going to find a new supplier. I'll still be doing this because I've really enjoyed this M&A work, but I'm going to focus some more attention on our e-commerce business. And I've also just enjoyed some of the coaching I've been doing with businesses. Now that I've got that M&A experience and I'm working with businesses, I just was talking to a woman, her and her husband, like a few weeks ago, just finished up, and they have a skincare brand. And I know nothing about skincare, but I was able to help her quite a bit, because again, I'm coming at this from the fresh set of eyes, and I'm just looking at the data. And the data is so obvious to me. It's just one of those things that's second nature. I don't maybe appreciate it as much, although I'm learning to more appreciate it. And she was very grateful of the advice and the counsel that I've given her and her husband, because I can see things plain as day where they're so in the weeds and they just don't have that experience. And I said to her, you're going to get there eventually. I'm just going to help you get there quicker, because I know, how to do some things. And she's at a point now where she can turn the volume up and really scale her business. And again, they're going to grow and then hopefully have a life-changing experience at some point down the road.
Well, I always say you need a coach, you need a mastermind, and you need a guru to oversee what you're doing to help you, so that way you can get where you need to be, because you can't go it alone.
That is correct. And we all need it, myself included. And I'm grateful to be part of some of the masterminds, because I want to be in the room where I'm the smallest guy. People are way ahead of me, so they're going to inspire me and they're going to help me. And of course, I want to contribute to the value of the group, which I'm confident that I've done. I've already done that in the past. And I know I can do that in the future.
So are you looking for opportunities for coaching people, or what are you looking for?
Yeah, if those come along, because again, doing this M&A work, I've now been able to advise a lot of these businesses just to help them button some things up. And now it's led to some other opportunities where they've just come to me, like the skincare brand I was just talking about. That just came to me randomly. It actually came from a podcast. And she was very, very grateful. Now, if I wanted to get involved more with that, I'm now building up that relationship, back to relationships, right? Where she would be more comfortable bringing me on board or something like that. They're not ready for that yet. That's completely fine. But I'm open to those opportunities, even though skincare is not quite the niche I play in. I know how this works from the M&A side. And I know the numbers she has. And I'm like, we could turn this thing, you can just scale this thing a little bit and you can have a nice exit experience if you do a few things. And so again, I'm just, because I've had this experience now, I would be fine if something like that came across the line, knowing the numbers that I know for her brand.
And so what I'm hearing is, as you create something, you also need to have an exit point.
You should. One of the things for your listeners, I had the vision in my mind, but it was also a lack of belief. I'm like, I want to build something so I can sell it. But I'm like, yeah, who knows if I'll be able to do that. Then you start learning that people are selling these digital assets. This is just like real estate, right? People buy and flip homes, fix homes up and sell them all the time. People are now doing that in the digital space world. And to me, it's utterly fascinating. They're buying these assets because then people are either choosing to shut these things down, or they can't grow it above a certain spot, so they're willing to sell it. And if you know certain things, what they're leaving on the table, where they've got some gaps, you can acquire that asset and then you can grow it and turn around and sell it. So I'm always on the lookout for these digital assets. And that's why I'm passionate about all this stuff. So while I'm still passionate about the fitness brand, now that I've learned this other stuff, my mind is really opened up for more opportunities, because that's where you can create some real value on multiple levels, not only for myself, but for the business owner in some capacity.
All right. Well, Steve, thanks for coming on the show today. Was there something you wanted to offer?
Yeah, no, thanks, Ed. I appreciate that.
And also, how do people find you? That's it.
Yeah, you can find me online. You can go to skrpmedia.com/inner Edison, and I'll do an inner dash Edison to make that clear. So skrpmedia.com/inner dash Edison. What I'll do there is you can go there and just answer a couple of questions. We can set up a free consultation call. And every time I've done those calls, I always get value. And the thing that I've heard over and over from the people on the receiving side is they've been grateful, of course, for my at least information that I've shared with them, but they've at least learned something. And so that is one thing I can guarantee people: you will learn something. I always learn something, no matter what it is. And that's what I'm hoping to provide for somebody who chooses to do that, is just at least to learn something about their business and just to get a fresh set of eyes. Again, I'm in the trenches now doing this, so I can see things a lot clearer that some people just can't see.
So basically, you go through what they're doing to see if there's any way that you can help them. Is that what you're looking at?
Correct. Yeah. So
where they need to improve, kind of thing.
That's correct. Yeah. So if they're coming to me and saying, I'm stuck in this spot, or I'm looking to grow, what are your thoughts? And we dig into, okay, what are you doing about your business? Just give me some high level stuff, and then I can give them some guidance. And from that perspective, they can go off on their own. If they want to do some further stuff, we can talk about that. But I just leave it as, this is just information. I'm here to try to give some value to people. Again, just because I'm in the role now, especially in the M&A side, and it's getting people to change their frame of reference. As I said a minute ago, is like, I was going to sell our business. I knew I was going to, but I had this belief I didn't know it was possible. But now I know it's possible, and I'm in the trenches doing that. And it's just incredibly exciting and empowering, quite frankly, knowing you can build an asset from an idea that doesn't take a lot of capital. It depends on what you're doing. And you can turn on and flip that and make a decent amount of money, and then take that money and buy real estate or buy something else.
Just keep growing your company.
Exactly.
Right. Learn how to make it bigger and bigger. Because I used Alex Hormozy's trying to buy everything he can get his hands on.
He is indeed. I'm not big enough for Alex yet. I would love to be in a spot where I could bring my business. He says $3 million is his threshold.
No, they dropped it to $1 million EBT, or $1 million profit.
Okay, $1 million. Okay. Well, if I was ready for that point, I would gladly go to him, because he would take me to 10, and I would do it all day long and give him a piece of the business.
Because I think they just, with this new release of his book and everything, he dropped it a little bit. It's basically the profit side of it that they're looking at to get you to the next level. But correct. It's another way to go, because I mean, he gave away everything for free to get everybody to come to him so he can buy their businesses. So
smart plan on his side. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it really is. Steve, thank you so much. Was there anything else you want to add before we go?
No, that's it. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to share this today in our conversation. This has been fun, and I hope your listeners have found at least one piece of value from this.
I'm sure they have. And hopefully go check out what he offered. And this, again, it was Steve Kilberg, and we really appreciate you. And again, Steve, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Ed. I really appreciate it.